Dr. Eva Cheng is someone with a passion for the science behind the tech that drives our multimedia world. Whether it's working out a better way to record sounds or working with people across many disciplines to develop new video tracking methods, she's there. As if that wasn't cool enough, Dr. Cheng is also involved with Engineers Without Borders, a group that's analogous to Doctors Without Borders, except where Doctors Without Borders goes into war-torn areas to supply much-needed medical help, Engineers Without Borders helps those areas rebuild their devastated infrastructure. Okay, so what we might do is we'll start with the obvious question: when did you get interested in science?
Okay, so I guess to be a little bit more specific, I'm more related to the computer side of science, and what I wrote is actually pretty accurate. So this is going to show my age. The internet came out when I was probably in mid to late high school, and I thought it was just really interesting how we can communicate with so many different people. Having family overseas, long distance phone calls back then were quite arduous. It wasn't just like it is now.
Oh, so, do you remember the dial tones, the international calling tones?
Yeah, and you had to get them right to even make a connection, let alone getting the phone numbers and area codes and all that sort of stuff. So even getting out of the country was a problem. So in terms of communicating with people, I found it was really amazing. And then the second thing I think which really motivated me was the amount of information that was available, basically at a click of a mouse at the time, which I was so used to going to the library, rifling through books, and then, you may not find what you're looking for anyway. So both of those things kind of triggered me to understand more about how the internet worked.
Good old Netscape one.
Yeah, Netscape Navigator. And I guess there's actually kudos to my high school computing teacher, because we actually started web programming when I was in high school. So it wasn't actually that difficult to write up some HTML and put something up. And that motivated me to take up a telecommunications engineering degree at university. So I didn't really get into tech until high school, which might be quite late in some cases.
So apart from so you went from, okay, oh my God, the internet, oh my gosh, the internet, and trust me, I was there around the same age. I'm probably showing my age as well.
Yeah.
So, and then you went into university and you went into telecoms. What part of telecoms did you actually study?
I guess it was a broad telecommunications engineering degree. I mean, all of this kind of tells my age because it was the .com boom at the time. So I guess with our discipline of electrical communications and computer, we generally start doing a very similar first and second year to build the fundamentals. And then in third and fourth year, you might specialize into networking theory. So what I remember studying was how do mobile phone networks work, how does the internet work in terms of the protocols, all that sort of thing. And the irony is that I found I didn't actually like any of that, having studied it. However, the beautiful story is I found the field of signal processing, which I did like, and that's what I'm doing now, and that's what I did my research in.
Okay, so what is signal processing for people who may not be au fait with that area? And to be honest, I sometimes sometimes I don't have an understanding of it.
Okay, I guess in a nutshell, it's just working with different types of signals. So what I mean by a signal, in my field, we look at speech and audio and image and video. So what we're looking at the moment on my computer, I've got Skype going on. If I load up YouTube, there's a video there. All of that requires the field of signal processing, but it's much more broad than that. From a computing point of view, a signal could be the 50 hertz power line signal. If you're looking at power quality, that's also a field of signal processing applied to power engineering. And in communications, it's obviously any kind of comm signal. 3G, 4G, Wi-Fi, all require signal processing.
All the radios.
Yep, absolutely.
So what is it about signal processing that really got you interested?
For me, because I have a background in music as well, I was classically trained, I use the word was, classically trained pianist as a kid, and I really loved music, but I kind of knew that I was never going to be good enough to be a performer. So I kind of went into the tech side of things, which I enjoyed as well. But signal processing gave me a way to combine those two interests, because musical signal processing, speech and audio, they were both really interesting to me. So that's how I got into what I'm doing now. And it's not something that I even dreamed of doing when I was going into uni, not even until probably I was finishing uni. So you just never know what you run into, I guess, is the story.
So you sort of looked back at uni and thought, you know what, I probably wanted to do something else.
Yeah, when I started, I wanted to work on the internet and make it better, make it more available to people. I mean, I'm still very passionate about getting the internet and information out to people, but how it actually worked was really boring to me. Some things just grab your attention, some things don't, and unfortunately, yeah, that kind of stuff just didn't. But DSP was really fun. So DSP being digital signal processing.
Okay, so does that require a lot of math?
A little bit. It's not overly mathematical. I think signal processing is interesting in that way. You could go into the fundamentals, which is heavily mathematical, or actually at the point where it can be quite applied. So it's more algorithmic development. So given a signal, what can we do with it? So it's probably more programming than it is mathematical in some cases.
So you're a computer scientist but there's a sort of debate going on because I'm a developer, self-taught developer.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked up something. I tend to go with the ooh shiny, let's see how that works method of education. But there's a bit of a debate about where computer science sits in the science area.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that?
Do you mean in a primary school, high school kind of discussion?
Not so much in the primary school, high school, because as far as I know, in primary school, high school, computer studies went from being this distinct subject that you did 2-unit computer studies at school, at high school, and then you went on to uni, to being now computers are everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But more university, more that sort of academia thing.
Interestingly, in the university that I've been to, the computer science department's never been in the School of Science. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's the technology equivalent of psychology. Does psychology sit in science or does it sit in arts? So for me, I don't think it's helpful to try and categorize things. Sometimes you just sit under a faculty by way of, I guess, administration. And when you actually teach, it could very well be cross-disciplinary. Because I'm actually electrical engineering. But the field that I work in and what I teach could actually be computer science. It's just by way of my degree, probably, that I'm in the faculty of engineering.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, you're not just like, all right, so you're a lecturer. Why? What? Sorry, it's late.
That's okay. I'm really tired too. We'll get there.
We'll get there. We will. Okay. What made you decide that you wanted to be a lecturer?
That wasn't a clear-cut decision, actually. I was one of those PhD students that said, I'm never going to be a lecturer. And then, I don't know. I think what happened was I didn't actually finish. I was doing my PhD and a research opportunity came up. So I was still finishing my PhD while I was doing a research position. Mm-hmm. And whilst doing the research position, and in hindsight, probably what I struggled with during the PhD was that I do enjoy my research, but I enjoy doing other things. So the teaching was something that I actually really enjoyed. And I guess being an academic lecturer, you can do all of those things, or both of those things to be exact. So I just kind of fell into the role.
How did you find doing your PhD? I've heard some horror stories and I've heard some interesting stories about doing it. What was the most stressful part of it for you?
I think it's the fun part, but also the stressful part. It's not knowing if you're absolutely ever correct. Because I'm a perfectionist, and doing a PhD has actually helped me be less of a perfectionist. Because we try and double check everything, make sure everything is correct, and sometimes you actually just have to let it go. It's as correct as to the best of your knowledge, and then that's when you write the papers to get the feedback from the community. Have I actually missed something, or is this okay, or have I, is there another way to approach this sort of thing? So it's a very individual pursuit, and I think that also makes it difficult. Like, it's not easy to be able to talk to someone in serious depth about your PhD because you're probably the only person out of a handful in the world possibly who really knows what you're doing. So I think the isolating factor is quite difficult.
So you were lucky enough to merge your PhD with your work life. I mean, as an academic researcher / lecturer. Yep. So now that you've got your PhD, you're continuing as a lecturer. What other pursuits are you doing? I see that you're actually part of Engineers Without Borders.
Yes. So that actually came through during my PhD. I got involved in various social justice activities at the university. By way of being on a campus, there's always something going on. And I guess social justice was something of interest to me. So Engineers Without Borders is then that nice combination of my interest in social justice, but also putting technical skills to use. So I did a little bit of volunteering with the club when I was doing my PhD, and as a lecturer, I picked that up again because I don't know, it's by luck or by strategic appointment. They gave me the course at the university which teaches the Engineers Without Borders Challenge, which is a first year, first semester course. Actually, it might be second semester, but for us, it's first semester, where students work in teams to come up with an engineering design solution for a community which is a partner of Engineers Without Borders. So that, for me, I love that course because it's, again, that nice combination of something I'm really interested in, but with the technical skills and also sharing that passion with my students. So, yeah. Lots going on with EWB.
Very cool. So what do you like doing outside when you're not computer sciencing and signal processing?
Traveling. I just came back and I'm ready to leave again just because I love traveling. Eating. That goes with traveling as well. But I read a lot. Even though I read for my job, I still love reading novels and I guess even non-fiction texts, particularly I guess in the social science and anthropology, to get my social justice fix, so to say.
So you have an interest outside it, but in anthropology. Tell me about that one.
I guess that kind of crept up on me as well. I'm very interested in culture because how do we form culture? How does that influence the way we live, the decisions we make? I guess part of that's from my upbringing because I was born in Australia, but my ethnic background is Hong Kong Chinese. So I guess when I was growing up, it was always a bit of, oh, am I Australian? Am I Chinese? You know, that was, high school in a nutshell. And now that I'm a bit older, I've had the opportunity to go back and visit a lot of family in Hong Kong and understand the culture there, how my parents would have grown up, and have reflected on how I've grown up. Would I have been a different person had I grown up in Hong Kong? And probably.
Yes.
But how does that? Yeah.
Sorry, I did actually live in Hong Kong for a few years in the 80s.
Oh, so it's a totally different environment, but
Absolutely.
it's interesting. So I think those kind of questions kind of triggered, what does culture mean and how does it influence us?
So do you find that would lead into what you're doing with your work with signal processing and computer science, that sort of cultural aspect?
I think what interests me now is how technology is changing culture. And especially with social media, how that changes the way we interact. Say, for example, things like Twitter, is 145 characters. I actually don't use Twitter too much, but that short messaging and even SMS, has that changed the way people communicate? I don't know. I actually haven't looked into this, but I guess it's these weird questions that pop up in my head. Sorry.
Example, in the last 5 days, we have Pokemon Go.
Oh, I've seen the news headlines. I actually don't know what it is.
Okay, you remember Pokemon, yes?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, Pokemon Go. Do you remember a game that Google put out a little while ago called Ingress?
No.
Okay, it's an augmented reality game where you have all real life locations are places where you capture and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
This version, you actually go out and capture Pokemon.
Okay.
So you can go out and catch a Pikachu, Pidgeotto, all the rest of them, and you battle for gyms to control gyms.
Right.
So it's on your phone. It uses augmented reality, so it gives you an overlay from Google Maps, gives you your location. When you're capturing, it uses the camera on your phone to overlay the Pokemon onto the real world, and then you play the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's massive. It's only been released in America, the UK, and Australia, New Zealand, and a couple of other countries, and it has gone completely nuts.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This shows how unconnected I am, or disconnected is probably the grammatically correct word.
Yes.
Yeah, right. As in viral, as in people are running around.
Yes.
Doing crazy stuff. Okay.
Well, let's see. People have been talking about whether they should climb fences into other people's backyards to catch Pokemon.
Oh, wow.
A young lady had the very unfortunate experience of finding a dead body while she was hunting for Pokemon.
Oh, boy.
There have been mass gatherings. People have been organising it on Facebook where they have events and 4,000 people turn up.
That's really interesting. Again, back to the anthropology stuff, but
Mm.
it's like the planking thing. So people's behavior, I mean, the ethical line is kind of all a bit blurred now. You wouldn't do that normally, but because it's a game,
Mm.
is it okay? And even if it's a game, it's an online game, is it also different? Yeah, interesting.
And the fact that there's so many other people doing it. I mean, there are people are getting up in the middle of the night, and because there's a Pokemon around, they're going out at 2 o'clock in the morning and wandering around hunting Pokemon.
That's a very quick obsession, I have to say.
I think it's the perfect storm of the people our age who grew up, well, not our age, maybe slightly younger than us, who grew up with Pokemon as their cartoon of choice.
Hmm.
Um, who have come to, all of a sudden the technology's there that they can relive their childhood fantasy of catching the Pokemon.
That's interesting because I guess the equivalent for us might be, the rehash of the new Ghostbusters movie.
Or Voltron,
Um, yeah.
which I
Oh,
just finished mainlining on Netflix.
oh, really?
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, I think I'd enjoy it as a kind of trip down memory lane, but I'm not sure, it'd be an obsession. But you never know, because I'm not that social media-y anyway.
Mhm.
So maybe it's a combination of things. Yeah, interesting.
Well, sorry to divert you, but I just
No, that's okay.
it's have a look the next time you're out and about. Have a look and see if how many people are actually just sort of stopping in the middle of it and flicking on their phones. Because if they're doing that, there's a fair chance that they're actually trying to catch a Pokemon.
I'm going to Google this afterwards. Because I have seen it in the news headlines, because I flick on my phone all the time on the tram, but I didn't actually read the story, because I figured it was like a movie or something, but evidently it's a bit more than that.
So, all right, what would you like? So, we'll sort of wrap this up. What would you actually like to achieve? What would like to be your shining goal in your field?
Ooh, there's a couple of things, I suppose. Yeah, let's start with one. Because of the context of this discussion, the gender imbalance in our field is of concern to me.
Hmm.
I think because when you're designing technology for the general population, if you have a gender biased workforce, you're actually not fairly representing 50% of your users. That's one thing. But the other thing is, in terms of balanced teams and effective workplaces, that gender bias also is not fantastic. So I'd very much like to see, it doesn't have to be 50-50, but just slightly more than the 10 or 20% that we've been seeing for the last, I don't know how many years.
Hmm.
And what's interesting to me is I've started doing school visits here in Melbourne, done some high school visits and primary school visits, and it's really interesting to see at what point students' views start to change from growing up, from influences from the media, parents, whatever it may be. I have to admit, I haven't done too much reading on this either. But from primary school, when we walk in and do these exercises with like even all girls schools, there's a lot of enthusiasm for technology. So at some point, there's a disconnect with playing with technology and making a career out of it. And it's also cultural. I guess this is the other anthropological angle, is it depends on the culture. So in Western culture, this gender bias is a lot more obvious than it is in perhaps parts of Asia.
Hmm.
And I say parts because, say, Iran, China have a much higher ratio of female computer scientists, engineers, mathematicians. I don't know the numbers, but just seeing the students that we get through, much higher proportion. But I help look after a teaching program in engineering for electrical in Hong Kong.
Hmm.
We have very low ratios there, and that I think is partially cultural. Well, probably largely cultural, but don't quote me on that one either because I haven't looked into that. But it's interesting. And even places like Japan, probably quite low, but Korea, I would expect to be slightly higher. It's just so culturally dependent and socially dependent.
I believe Malaysia is quite relatively high when it comes to the male to female ratio as well.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually. Yeah. And Southeast Asia, I guess, it's watch this space.
Mm.
Actually, Myanmar, I've been told there's quite a few women doing STEM, which is good.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to watch as it comes up because Myanmar's stabilised. It's starting to pick itself up and starting to develop. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Myanmar's going to be a very interesting country. I visited about a year or so ago, and if I go back this year, I think it'll be in some cases, totally different to what I saw already a year ago.
Mm.
But
Has
yeah,
just out of curiosity, I believe Aung San Suu Kyi was going to be had floated plans to rename it back to Burma.
oh, that's interesting.
Don't quote me on that. I think I saw it.
That's okay.
But all right. So outside of the gender balance issue, what would
Oh
be
yeah.
crowning glory?
I think for me, what motivates me to do anything is just to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So I think part of the other reason why I like lecturing is just by having one student out of 300, if they've really grasped something or they've found something really interesting that could influence, like me, the DSP thing,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, to help someone in that way is all I need. I don't need to be a CEO. I don't need a gazillion dollars just to make a difference in the world, however small that might be. And definitely being able to keep going with the social justice combined with the engineering. I think humanitarian engineering is a huge field. And it's interesting to introduce it at an early age, or not early age, early stage,
Mm-hmm.
because the students are adults. Just because
Well,
people kind of know about it. Sorry.
they're in university.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so people know about the field, but they may not have considered it as a career path. And I kind of think back, and if I'd known about it, that possibly could have changed my direction as well. But, the power of hindsight.
Well, you don't have the same publicity as, say, Medicine Sans Frontiers or something like that, do you?
No, not yet. Yeah, it's interesting because medicine always, everyone relates to health, but in terms of infrastructure, sometimes it's always there and you use it every day, but you don't quite think about it.
Mm.
The fact that you've got a road, power, computers, a house, it's just there.
Thanks to Dr. Cheng for taking the time out of a busy schedule to have a chat and to reminisce about things like international dial tones. If you'd like to know more about Engineers Without Borders, then you can head along to ewb.org.au. The music for this episode is Coca-Cola by Texas Radio Fish and is licensed Creative Commons Attribution. Of course, you can find it at dig.ccmixter.org. Also, if you know of a woman who's involved in the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, maths and medicine, who you think would be great for this series, then please drop me a line at james@angrybeanie.com. I'd love to hear more. All right, talk to you later.